Kartini is a tragic portrait of a woman at the turn of the 20th century when a woman's worth was merely perceived as a kanchawinking companion confined to the well, kitchen, and bed. Her life story depicts the suffering of Javanese women shackled with the walls of tradition and customs of the arrogant and steadfast feudal patriarchal Javanese society, which limited their freedom of movement from the provision of education, the existence of pingitan, confinement, to being prepared for polygamy by their husbands, all in the name of devotion. R.A. Kartini was born on April 21, 1879 in Mayong, Jepara. She was daughter of Raden Mas Sosroningrat, who served as the regent of Jepara. In 1885, Kartini started schooling at the European Luxury School, ELS, which was exclusively for Dutch residents and indigenous children from elite circles only. From a young age, Kartini displayed a great thirst for knowledge. She loved reading books and learning about various subjects. At school, Kartini had many friends because of her cheerful, charming, and intelligent nature. Kartini was the most active and brightest student. Nevertheless, Kartini was unable to continue to higher education, despite her father's high position. She still could not pursue further education because customs and traditions prevented Kartini from continuing her studies. In 1892, Kartini reached the age of 12. She had entered her teenage years as a young lady, although her father was progressive enough to educate his daughters. He still could not fully break away from the old and aristocratic traditions. Kartini, a child with so many talents, lively and cheerful, was not allowed to continue her studies. She had to leave behind all the joys of school. She was considered old enough to submit to ancient customs. She had to undergo pingitan, confined within the house without any contact with the outside world until a man, destined by God, came to take her as his wife and bring her to his home. The colonial government's regulations at the time required a regent to marry women from nobility background. Since Ngasira was not noble birth, in 1875, Sosroningrat took a second wife, Raden Ayumuriam, who descended from the kings of Madura. The second wife of Sosroningrat then became the Garwa Padmi, principal wife, while Ngasirah became the Garwa Ampil, secondary wife. In that era, feudalism was also extremely strong and rigid. Ngasirah even had to address her own biological children as Ndoro, master, lord, while they called her you in formal address. Only the Garwa Padmi could the regent of Jepara's sons and daughters call Ibu, mother. Yes, Kartini was criticizing feudalism. She depicts another example. For instance, if her younger sibling was sitting on a chair and she walked past them, the sibling had to get off and sit on the floor, bowing their head until she had passed. Meanwhile, a proper Javanese girl was expected to walk very slowly with tiny steps like a snail. Kartini was known to have started reading her first letter in 1899. Kartini's first letter was addressed to one of her associates, who was a feminist activist in the Netherlands, Stella Zehandelaar. In that letter, Kartini wrote about her anxiety due to restraint of freedom as a woman. She encouraged women not to be confined to just routines at home, because women fundamentally have the freedom of determining their own destiny. In her first letter, she also discussed how the Javanese treated, especially those with noble titles like herself. In her first letter, she also discussed how the Javanese tradition treated women, especially those with noble titles like herself. Women had to obey the rules of the kingdom, which she actually opposed. This included how she had to walk in a crouched position when passing by her parents, just to show respect. Then, since 1889 until 1904, Kartini began actively writing. In one of her letters, she also opposed the practice of polygamy, which was still prevalent in Java at the time. As a victim of polygamy, Kartini was forced by her father to marry the regent of Rembang at the time. Kartini often read and sent letters to her friends from the Netherlands. Kartini obtained her reading materials from one of her friends, Rosa Abandonon. It was from this letter correspondence and reading resources that the spirit of change and progressive thinking, like European women, was born within Kartini. Kartini also once sent a letter to Mrs. Ovingsur, in which she expressed her desire to seek a scholarship to the Netherlands. Kartini openly stated her own ambitions and those of some like-minded friends to become pioneers and enlighten their people. On August 8, 1900, a glimmer of hope emerged. J.H. Abandonon, who at the time served as the director of the Department of Education, Crafts, and Religion, visited Jepara Regency. His visit aimed to socialist plans for establishing a co-school, boarding school for girls from noble families. However, this proposal faced rejection from most regions. They used the traditional reason prohibiting the education of girls outside the home. Kartini was instructed to marry the regent of Rembang, K.R.M. Adipati Aryo Singgi Jojo Adiningrat, who had previously had 3 wives. Kartini got married on November 12, 1903. Her husband understood Kartini's desires, and she was given the freedom and support to establish a women's school next to the east gate of the Rembang Regency office complex. Since meeting with the regent of Rembang, Kartini experienced a change in her way of thinking. Not all arranged marriages became a source of suffering for Javanese women. Kartini found a bright side to the darkness of Javanese feudal customs, which was the region of Rembang. Kartini, who initially rebelled against tradition, ultimately accepted it. Thus, the influence of European women's thought related to feminism, which was dominant within Kartini, can be assumed to be liberal feminism. This was because by finding an ideal life partner who fully supported Kartini's struggle without her having to go to Europe, it was a victory for Kartini. Kartini fought for women's emancipation through concrete actions. She wrote letters to her feminist friends in the Netherlands, expressing her anxieties and urging the liberation of Javanese women from the feudal traditions that restricted their freedom. She opposed the prevalent practice of polygamy through her letters. After marrying the regent of Rembang, she established a school for the education of girls within the palace complex. as an effort to free women from ignorance. She also published a book compiling her letters that critiqued the Javanese customs that oppressed women, thereby spreading ideas of emancipation through the real actions of later reading, establishing a girls' school, and publishing her criticism of patriarchal traditions. Kartini became one of the pioneers in the struggle for women's liberation and equality in Dutch East Indies during that era.